Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
6:07, it's O'Connor and Company. Unlike MSNBC, we are not forced to rebrand. We are proudly exactly who we've always been. It's O'Connor and Company, Larry O'Connor, Julie Gunlock on WMAL. WMAL has not had to rebrand in any way whatsoever in about 100 years now.
Really?
Here in the nation's capital, and certainly in the modern era of WMAL since Rush Limbaugh began in the early 90s. It's funny how MSNBC has to reimagine who they are. I wonder why. Coming up at 6:35, Noah Wall will join us from the State Leadership Initiative. 7:05, Mary Catherine Ham. 7:35, Dan Hoffman, former CIA dude, talk about the Russia-Ukraine talks. And then at 8:05, J. Christian Adams on Trump's move to get rid of mail-in balloting. There's Julie Gunlock. Have you had to rebrand ever, Julie Gunlock?
Always. Gosh. I embarrass myself regularly.
Well, that's not rebranding, though. Well, wait, what do you mean you embarrass yourself?
Just kidding.
That was a trap. All right. Yesterday was extraordinary. As I said during yesterday's program, we're sort of used to the eyes of the world being on this town. It's sort of the most powerful place on the planet, Washington, D.C. But yesterday was something special, as just 2 days after meeting Vladimir Putin at an Air Force base in Alaska, where the media around the world were outraged over the color of the rug. President Trump then hosted in the nation's capital at his home at 1600 Pennsylvania a whole host of world leaders from Western Europe who are intent on trying to hammer out an end to the violent war between Russia and Ukraine that began because Joe Biden was a feckless, weak leader and allowed Vladimir Putin to roll his tanks across the border into Ukraine. Since then, I saw this extraordinary stat yesterday. The war began in February of 22, right? 1 year into the Biden administration. By November of 22, Russia had gained quite a bit of territory there on the eastern side of Ukraine. Since November of 2022, the land acquisition by Russia or back to Ukraine or back to Russia has only changed by a factor of 0.97% of Ukraine's total territory. So it has been stuck in a stalemate since November of 2022, just a few months into this conflict. Since then, it's been nothing but just, blood and guts and gore over nothing. Over again, less than 1% exchanged in land acquisition by Russia. So the parties appear to be intent and focused on bringing this to an end in some way. In fact, before we get to the events yesterday, this is a stunning development. A new poll of Ukrainians found that 70% favor a negotiated peace deal. Right after the incursion by Russia and the violent attack from the thug Vladimir Putin, only 20% of Ukrainians were willing to have a negotiated peace deal. At that point, they were like, no, screw it. We're going to fight to the death. This is our homeland. And I get it. And I understand that. But after, again, like I said, nearly 3 years now of no difference, it's a stalemate. 70% of Ukrainians say we want a negotiated deal. And let's remind everybody that elections have been suspended in that country. And so, I think that they feel a little voiceless right now in the wake of all of this, and they would like to get this done. So the day began a little shaky because there were images of Vladimir Zelensky meeting with President Trump's special representative on this matter, Keith Kellogg, wearing nothing but a black jeans and black T-shirt. I was going to say nothing but a black T-shirt, but that would have conjured images. Black jeans and a black T-shirt. I love that, the things that drive everybody crazy. It's like the red carpet in Alaska, and now Zelensky's just wearing a T-shirt, and people were commenting saying, oh, here we go again. He's going to show up in a T-shirt, and it's going to be over.
Yeah. I wish he wouldn't be as. I do find that very disrespectful to meet with Kellogg like that and be in the White House. Just basic common sense.
Well, I don't believe this was in the White House, this meeting.
Okay.
I believe this was in either Blair House or perhaps in the Ukrainian embassy.
Yeah, still.
But by the time I believe it was at the Ukrainian embassy. Anyway, he rolled up, all the world leaders rolled up, quite a scene of protocol. You know, the chief protocol officer there at the White House now is Monica Crowley, our former colleague in the media. She looked stunning. And, you're a world leader. You get out of your limo, and who's there to greet you but a curvy, big, blonde woman there, Monica Crowley, said, "Welcome to America. This is what we're all about."
I love how the media kind of went out after her last week because there was like a menu found in a hotel room, and they were like, "Oh, secret information, a seating chart, and a menu." After the summit was over. Right? Nothing classified.
So
nothing
sloppy.
They tried to... Yes. Yeah, she didn't care.
And then Zelensky pulled up, and President Trump personally went to greet him. He got out, and yes, he was wearing his suit. He still looked like an Eastern European mobster. And he looked incredibly uncomfortable. The memes that were created, people were like screen shooting it and putting
I'm
it
no
out
fans
saying,
of the Queer Eye guys, but it might be time.
But he got out, and I swear Trump, I don't know what he exactly said, but the body language as he was like commenting on his suit, he was like, "Look at you.
I know.
You got yourself a suit and a collar. Are you wearing a collar? You look so grown up now."
Oh, dear.
He then escorted President Zelensky in to meet. You had the Prime Minister of the UK, you had the President of France, you had the Prime Minister of Italy, you had the Chancellor of Germany, you had representatives, Prime Ministers of the of the Scandinavian nations, Finland, etc. They all lined up for a photo op. And at one point, Trump leaned over. They have a big mural picture of Trump, the fight, fight, fight moment, where he emerged from behind his podium with blood down his face, and he stopped and he wanted all the world leaders to look at that picture. He pointed it out, and they all leaned over and looked at it. And I thought to myself, you talk about power moves. First was with Putin having the stealth bomber fly overhead. And now with all these other world leaders, he stopped them all to look at that moment that they all knew what that moment represented. It's like, I was willing to take a bullet for this job. How about you guys? Where's your skin in the game? Are you in it to win it here?
Not just that. I took a bullet and I got up and I raised my fist in the air and said, "Fight."
Yeah.
I mean, boy, that says something.
By the way, the most important thing was the fact that Zelensky was wearing a suit, and there's been a deep dive into research on this. Apparently, this summit was the first time Zelensky has worn a business-style jacket since the 2022 invasion. He has not worn a business jacket since then because he's a wartime president, so he has to dress in pretend fatigues. And this is it was a big deal for him to do this. As a U.S. official put it, Zelensky came looking like a normal human being. Not crazy. He was just like somebody that should be at NATO. So they had a good conversation. And by the way, by all indications, it was a very good meeting. Neither Zelensky nor Trump were baited by some of the questions that the reporters were trying to throw out there to try to make an incident in the Oval Office. We'll play a little bit of what their responses were to some questions about whether Zelensky is willing to change the map in order to get a peace, if U.S. troops would be involved in securing the peace, who's giving what, who's taking what. We'll give you as much as we can and read the tea leaves here as much as is humanly possible without sounding like a speculating moron on MS Now. We'll get you that in a moment. First, though, at 6:15, WMAL.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Before we get into the details of what appears to be the meeting and some of the audio from the Oval Office, can we just stop for a moment and once again glory in the rubber face that is Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni of Italy? She is so expressive.
Yes.
And I don't think she's actually rolling her eyes in some kind of disgust. I think that it's just sort of a facial tic that she does when people are talking and she's trying to concentrate on what she's saying. She sort of looks at the ceiling. But it indicates to the rest of the world that she is just so bored with everything going on around her.
Yeah, as someone with a face for radio, I totally relate to this. I have trouble controlling my face while I talk. As you know, I worked on Capitol Hill, and the senator I worked with, or for rather, he once, very important meeting, we're talking about some sort of issue with Colombia. He actually stopped the entire meeting to tell everyone to look at my face because I was listening, because it was kind of some horrors were being, and I was apparently listening and just couldn't stop moving my face. So I get this. This is all, I'm one of those people who, when I listen, my face contorts, and when I talk, it's even worse. So I love her. Expressive. I love her. She is my people.
She's amazing. And by the way, when people say you have a face for radio, they don't. Usually that means you're unattractive. Julie, you are just as gorgeous as Prime Minister Maloney.
Oh, and please, yes, but thank you.
Just as expressive. Just as expressive. It was a wonder to see.
I love her. Totally. Thank you, Larry.
Let's take a listen here as President Trump sat, and boy, everyone was holding their breath because the scene was exactly the same as it was a few months ago, with J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio sitting on the sofa, Trump and Zelensky framing in the two gold chairs next to the fireplace, and we know what happened last time. Everyone took these seats. So it was a little bit better this time. Let's start with cut 2.
I can never say that. It's never the end of the road. People are being killed, and we want to stop that. So I would not say it's the end of the road. No, I think we have a good chance of doing it. It's been almost 4 years now that a lot of people were killed last week. A lot of people last week. I mean, millions of people killed, but a lot of people last week for whatever reason. A big number, a lot of soldiers, on both sides. And I know the president, I know myself, and I believe Vladimir Putin wants to see it ended.
One thing that it appears the Trump administration has secured, and with an agreement with Putin, is that no, Ukraine will not become a member of NATO, but from this point forward, after the cessation of this war, which appears to be imminent, I don't want to be too optimistic here, but that's what it appears to be, that if there is further violence from Russia against the people of Ukraine, Ukraine will have the benefit of Article 5 style NATO protections from a handful of European countries. Now, they're not going to be a part of NATO, but they're going to say, you mess with them and you're messing with us. So that aspect of NATO will, in fact, be extended to them without, and we don't know what that formal agreement looks like. And Trump was asked, well, does that mean U.S. troops will be involved in protecting Ukraine if that's necessary? And here was his response. I'll let you dissect it. Cut 3.
Your team has talked about security guarantees. Could that involve U.S. troops? Would you roll that out in the future?
We'll let you know that maybe later today. We're meeting with 7 great leaders of great countries also, and we'll be talking about that. They'll all be involved, but there'll be a lot of help when it comes to security. There's going to be a lot of help. It's going to be good. They are first line of defense because they're there. They're Europe. But we're going to help them out also. We'll be involved.
Mr. President, Vladimir Putin mentioned that the war will not end without addressing the root causes of this war. Have you had an understanding what are the root causes of this war?
Well, look, the war is going to end. When it ends, I can't tell you, but the war is going to end, and this gentleman wants it to end, and Vladimir Putin wants it to end. I think the whole world is tired of it. And we're going to get it ended. It was, I've done 6 wars. I've ended 6 wars, and I thought this maybe would be the easiest one, and it's not the easiest one. It's a tough one. A lot of reasons for it, and they'll be talking about it for a long time. But they'll be talking about the others. Look, India, Pakistan. We're talking about the big places. When you look at, you just take a look at some of these wars. You go to Africa and take a look at that. Rwanda and the Congo, Republic of the Congo. That's been going on for 31 years. And so we've done a total of 6, and we really have 6, not including the fact that we obliterated, and it turned out to be a total obliteration, the nuclear, as you said, the future nuclear capability of Iran. And this one, I think we're going to get solved also. I feel confident we're going to get it solved.
By the way, he was also later asked, what are we giving Ukraine? And Trump stopped him and said, we're not giving them anything. We're going to sell them weapons and armaments. And he went on to say that the Biden administration was corrupt. with all of the money that was flying back and forth. So what do you think? I mean, he sounds pretty optimistic, considering where we were a week ago.
He has been very consistent, Larry. He has always said, deal with the things in your backyard. This is Europe's problem. Europe needs to solve this. I think by sort of creating this situation where there is some NATO involvement, yet not a part of NATO, is a perfect solution, because it allows the United States and these other countries, it allows the United States to sort of say, hey, okay, so NATO's got to get going. Europe, you've got to take care of this. So it allows the U.S. to put pressure on these European members of NATO to actually do something if there is an incursion into Ukraine from Russia. So to me, this is a beautiful solution.
Coming up at 7:35, we'll take the temperature of Dan Hoffman. He's a retired CIA dude, and he knows a lot about the whole Russia dynamic. Right now, it's 6:23.
Coming up, we're going to talk to Noah Wall. He's president of the State Leadership Initiative, and he's going to talk about a new report that accuses bureaucrats of running a shadow government that pushes DEI, gender ideology, and other things at federal agencies and state agencies. Keep it here. It's 6:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
6:37, it's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here on this Tuesday morning extravaganza. At 7:05, we'll talk to our friend Mary Catherine Ham. At 7:35, Dan Hoffman, a retired CIA spook, on the Russia-Ukraine talks and what Russia might be thinking of all this. 8:05, J. Christian Adams responding to Trump wanting to get rid of mail-in ballots. That's all coming up. It's Larry O'Connor alongside the rubber-faced Julie Gunlock. I don't know why. I'm just... The comparisons of you and Giorgia Meloni are apt. People, if people have not seen you in action on video, it's true. You roll your eyes like a pro.
Yeah.
Joining us right now, we're following up on a story that we discussed yesterday. It's Noah Wall. He's the president of the State Leadership Initiative. Noah, thank you for joining us.
It's great to be on.
I saw this report that your organization put out having to do with what you call the shadow government, DEI initiatives that oftentimes are instigated by these organizations and entities like the National Board of School Board Members or what have you, that continue to push these policies and agendas despite the president's executive orders and even despite Republican governors who have campaigned and won elections against this stuff. But flesh this out for us a little bit, because I think most people after the last election think, good, we're done with that.
Oh, I wish we could be done with that, but the left has really made it hard to get past this. So this report that we just put out, it's called the Shadow Government Report, and it itemizes over 20 national organizations that are hyper-focused on specific state government functions. So National Association of Treasurers, State Treasurers, National Association of State School Board Directors. You can go down the list. So if you think of a state government function, there is a national association of that thing. And what this report, really the bombshell in this report, is that every single one of these organizations is woke. And so we itemized 20. We could have added another 20 or 30 easily to this report. There are many dozens of these organizations, and we did not leave out a single one because we did not find that it was not woke. And what these organizations do is they set best practices, they write model legislation, they write regulations, and so they set the standards for how state governments are run. And so this report itemizes in detail exactly why, you might have Maryland governed in the exact same way that Texas or South Carolina is. And it's because of these national organizations setting the rules of the road for how state bureaucracies are funded.
Noah, when DOGE was sort of up and operating and really active earlier on, we saw a lot of USAID funds funding some of these groups. Were you able, does this report sort of talk about the funding that these groups get? And is that the way that these groups can be curtailed? What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it was USAID money that's really been keeping these guys going.
Well, what's really interesting about that is the state governments actually fund these organizations directly. And so what I actually think is going on here is that, so a lot of these organizations are very old. The National Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials was founded in 1914. And, I'll use that as an example. So it's highways. It sets the rule. It sort of sets the standards for synchronizing rules and regulations governing transportation, at the state level, but nationally. So it basically makes sure that different states have similar rules for their highways. And that sounds fine. That's all good. Except about 20 years ago, this organization started incorporating race into how they recommended that states determine where to spend transportation dollars. So they really started, politicizing that. But the actual states around, individual states around the country pay membership dues to these organizations. So what I think is happening is that these governors just don't realize that this has been politicized. When you send, your transportation secretary to a conference with other transportation officials, you're not thinking, oh my gosh, this is probably super woke, but they are. And in fact, that organization is especially politicized, and they've done they've incorporated race into every single, aspect of highway transportation governance. And it's really disturbing. But I think that part of the power of this report is it shows that governors, if they pay just a little bit of attention, they can demand that these organizations that they fund institute reforms.
Yeah, and again, if you can just sort of quickly summarize how the agenda of these organizations that, represent school board members, represent highway engineers or employers or safety individuals, whatever, how does their agenda manifest into state policy? Does it happen in an open hearing? Are people voting on this, or is it just part of each state's deep state?
Yeah, so it's sort of both. So these organizations set, what you might call best practices. I'll use another example that I think sort of illustrates how this actually takes place and how this actually gets implemented. So there's a National Association of Medicaid Directors. Medicaid for every single state in the country pretty much is the largest individual department of that state. But if you're a governor, you don't imagine that the Medicaid director is not like a politician. It's someone who, specializes in
administering it's a green eye shade expert dude that you just put in there to get the job done.
Exactly. And so, they're a member of this organization. They send them to the conference. At the conference, so I'll give you an example of types of things that they set. How should the federal government handle reimbursements for various aspects of Medicaid, various Medicaid programs, and that they'll meet as a group of every single state in the country is a member of this association, and so they'll have meetings, with an agenda, and they'll sort of vote on what they think the right approach is, and so that they'll sort of harmonize their approach to things. But this association, just in 2023, as an association, they got together and they lobbied the Biden administration to incorporate health equity, which is, this is outcomes by race, So they sent a letter as an association, as a group of state Medicaid directors to the Biden administration, asking them to change a rule to incorporate race into determining, basically saying that if, Medicaid providers are not sufficiently diverse, so if they don't have sufficient amount of diversity, that you get reimbursed less if it's not diverse enough. So essentially forcing DEI on healthcare providers.
And that just becomes
sort of
policy.
They get together, they agree, and they just push it forward. And because these are not political people, they don't necessarily know, or they're not thinking about this in the way that their boss, the governor, campaigned on.
They need every single governor needs a chief of staff and a budget director who is plugged in on all of this and knows exactly what's going on so they can catch it. The governors have very busy jobs, but they need to make this a priority. We're out of time. Noah Wall, the State Leadership Initiative. Go ahead and check the report. Fox News wrote it up. It's how DEI is still on steroids at the state level, and bureaucrats are running these things outside of the governor's understanding. Thank you, Noah. Appreciate the conversation.
Thanks for having me on.
WMAL's Vince Colonnese, weekdays at noon on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
It's 6:51 now. Got a lot ahead of us, and there's a whole lot of developments in Northern Virginia here with regard to the Loudoun County School Board. We're going to give you more details on that, punishing the boys who objected to having a girl in their locker room. But, Julie, you just mentioned, and I think we're awaiting confirmation, is it true that the Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears is going to be appearing at a school board meeting in Arlington tonight?
Yes, she is going to be, and I believe she's going to be speaking.
This is great.
This is, talking about Title IX. She wants to focus on how this isn't good for schools, this isn't good for the kids. Parents are objecting to this, and of course, Abigail Spanberger is totally silent on this. So, I am so excited that Sears is going to be there. She's going to be speaking up, and she's going to be standing with parents who are also planning to go.
That's great. And I believe Arlington is just a mile away. That school board location is just a mile away from WJLA's headquarters in Rosslyn.
Yeah.
So maybe Nick Minnock and his camera crew can be there?
Yes. Really quickly, it's at 2110 Washington Boulevard, second floor. That's the CIFAX Education Center. Again, 2110 Washington Boulevard in Arlington.
Good for Winsome Sears. Abigail Spanberger, once again, where are you? 6:52.